Hey, this is Control here, and I'm bringing you guys a video on Vlps's Midrange Shaman. This is a list that we've used to climb to rank 111 this season with, and Vlps finished rank 16 with last season. He also used Control Warrior on his climb. Here are a few pros and cons as far as Midrange Shaman goes. So pro is board control. This is a very board control centered deck. It's really the point of it. Just keep the board, hold it, and then eventually win. You also have the aggro Shaman start, which is very good. So you have your Tunnel Trog into Totem Golem into other strong overload cards, and hopefully turn 4 Dr. 4. So just strong oversided minions, and that's how you control the board really. You just play stronger minions, take favorable trades, and then eventually push that out to a victory. You also have huge tempo swings with this list. Thing from below is a huge tempo swing. It can be a 0 mana 5/5, which is pretty crazy. And we also have favorable win rates against most of the tier 1 decks. So right now I'm above 60 against Zoo, against aggro Shaman, and against warrior variants. However, there are a couple cons of this list. So number 1 is overload. You have to manage overload quite well to do a good job playing this deck and have a good win rate. So it's definitely something that you have to think about a lot while you're playing. It's just your future turns and what you're going to do. Next is Totem and Lightning Storm RNG. So sometimes you just need to win that 1 in 4 to get the Taunt Totem to survive, which kind of sucks. And then Lightning Storm, you roll a 2, it's not that great, and then you roll a 3 and it's really good. You have to hope for the 50-50s there. So that's definitely an unfortunate part of this list. And then we have poor win rates against Mage and Druid, or at least I have so far playing this deck. Yeah, I believe I'm sub 50 for both those. We'll talk about the win rates later though. Here's just some general advice for playing the list. So you should always be playing around AoE as much as you can. If you're going to lose to it, regardless if your opponent has a Flame Strike or not, then just go all in. But if you can play around the AoE, play around it for sure to win the game. Next is, again, planning just your overload. It's very, very important with this deck. If you just slam down Dr. 4 on turn 4, and you don't have a 3 mana play the next turn, you probably should wait, unless that's your best option. But you just have to be thinking about what you can do with your overload crystals in the following turns. And then lastly, big minions on the left and Manatite on the very left. This is just for Flame Tongue, so you can bounce down your small totems and just keep on trading and getting favorable trades, similar to Direwolf Alpha and Zoo. Okay, so here's a deck list. It's just a decent mid-range Shaman list made again by Vlps. He has said that this list is refined, so I wouldn't try changing too much. The total dust cost is 4,520, and then you also need to spend 1,400 gold for the double Tunnel Trogs. I wouldn't recommend playing this list without the Tunnel Trogs, but if you want to make a budget version, you can drop Alakir for a Doomhammer, and you can drop the Harrison Jones for a second Thunderbluff or an Acidic Swamp who's in a very weapon-heavy meta. Against any class going first or second, you're going to want to keep Argent Squire, Totem Golem, Tunnel Trog, Tuskar Totemic, and Flame Tongue if you already have 2 1-drops. And going second, you'll also want to keep Feral Spirit. I wouldn't advise keeping Flame Tongue if you didn't have 2 1-drops in your sorting hand already. So going first, your mulligan is the same as it would be in general. And then going second, feel free to keep Feral Spirit as well. Very good card with Tunnel Trog. Just a solid minion overall, but I don't like keeping it when I go first. Next is Hex. So Hex is a good card against all these innervated out taunts that druids can play. Just cheating out a Dark Aura Koa on turn 2 with double innervate. Then you have the turn 3 answer with Hex. And next is Dr. 4. So if you can coin this out on turn 3, druids often don't have a way to deal with it. If they're more control-y lists, the only way they'll be able to deal with it is mulch, and forcing them to have that in their hand pretty early is great. And if it's 6, you're pretty happy. So against Hunter, our mulligan is the same as general, but going first we'll also keep Rockbiter. Rockbiter is just good to deal with their 2/1 Fiery Bat or their 3/2 Huge Toad, any of those minions. So I generally will like to keep that on whenever I go first or second. The going first mulligans also apply to going second. The coin just indicates that we're going to add these 2 cards and that they're fine to keep. So I would also say the Feral Spirit is good going second against Hunter, not Furso. And if you have a decent hand already, I would advise in keeping Hex. It's very, very good in this matchup, and one of the reasons we have a favorable win rate against them, just because we can Hex away their Savannah High main. So mulligans for Mage is very similar to general mulligans, just to add in the Rockbiter, and again that's to deal with the Mana Worm. Mulligans for Paladin are a little bit different than general. We do keep Harrison Jones because most of the time the Paladin list will be N'Zoth ones, and they'll be looking to hard mulligan for True Silver on turn 4, so if we have the answer for that, we're very happy. Also, we add in Hex. If you have a good hand already, Hex is very good against N'Zoth Paladin, as they run a lot of minions like Sylvanas, Karen, and Tyrion, so there's a ton of good Hex targets in that list. Mulligans for Priest are very similar to General Mulligans, except we're going to add in Azure Drake if we're on coin. Perfectly happy playing that on turn 4 and cycling it. Mulliganing for Rogue is same as General. You just want solid minions and a good curve. And a way to snowball your victory. You just want to out-tempo them really. Mulliganing for Shaman, we add in Rockbiter. Rockbiter is a great way to deal with another Tunnel Trog, so it's always a good card to have. And then we also add Harrison Jones if we're on coin. And this is only in the case that you have a good hand already. I wouldn't keep Harrison Jones by itself. For Warlock, we also keep Rockbiter, just to deal with cards like Flame Imp and Voidwalker. And then you can also trade up with an Argent Squire into, say, Imp Gang Boss and have a clean way to deal with it. And then we also will keep Lightning Storm on coin if our hand is good already, because in this matchup we often win based on that one card just clearing their board. Against Warrior, we add Harrison Jones going first. This also means we take it going second, by the way. So with Harrison Jones, we just want to keep it because lots of Warrior lists are slower, and even if they're not, they're faster ones, so consider a Pirate Warrior. If you can Harrison Jones on curve and clear the Arcanite Reaper, you're usually very happy. Even just clearing a 3-1 Fiery War Axe is pretty big with this card, so that's why we keep it going first. And then going second, if you have a read that your opponent's a Control Warrior, I'd suggest keeping Azure Drake. It's very good against them. Some keys for the Druid matchup are to remember to use Hex on big targets like Ancient of War. Another tip is to use Lightning Storm when your opponent plays Wisps of the Old God or has a big enough board. You should also look to play around Deathwing if you can. I've gotten destroyed about 4 times by Deathwing against Druids in the past couple weeks, so it's always something to consider. And in this matchup, you just want to control the board. You want to seize board control early and maintain it throughout the game. Against Hunter, you're looking to establish board early, carry that out throughout the game, while playing around Unleash the Hounds a little bit if you can, but you're really just looking for board control. Some keys here are using Hex on their turn 6 high main. Huge tempo gain for you. You usually win the game after doing that. Also, playing around Deadly Shot and Freezing Trap when you play Dr. 4, very, very huge. If you play that on turn 4, your opponent just gets a free Deadly Shot on it, then you only have 3 mana to play with next turn. So it can really lose you the game if you play that, and it gets destroyed easily. Also, Harrison Jones can be pretty big in this matchup if the list that the Hunter's running does run Eaglehorn Bow. Draw a couple cards. Pretty big swing. Something to always worry about when you play Mage is if they kept a load of cards and you play Totem Golem on 2, they can get away with Cult Sorcerer Arcane Blast or Thalnos Arcane Blast. Either way, it puts you really far behind. So I'd always caution playing against that. Although you shouldn't really play around it, I'd still say play Totem Golem on 2 and force them to have it. But it is something that's very swingy and can often lose you the game that early already. Also, after the Mage uses Flame Strike on you, try and refill your board with cards like Thing from Below. Just anything cheap. I mean, 0 mana 5/5 if it's at that point, then it's a really good way to refill the board and make it awkward for your opponent to come back. Because usually when they Flame Strike, that's the only thing they're going to be doing all turn long. So next turn, you're going to have initiative again if you have Thing from Below in your hand. Against Paladin, you're looking to Hex cards like Tyrion, Sylvanas, and Karen. It's very good, denies N'Zoth value. And then you're looking to play cards like Thing from Below right after your opponent uses the Equality Clear, just so you can come right back on board, seize board control again, and force your opponent to have the second Equality Clear. Also in this matchup, a card like Harrison Jones can be pretty important, as you can deny True Silver value that they really rest on to win their mid-game with. Priest is pretty annoying to play against, and I haven't had too many games, but I've won them all so far, I believe. And how you do that really is just force them to use their Excavated Evils, their Holy Novas, their Arcanine Circles, and then after that's all done, you play Thunderbluff Valiant and just keep on using Hero Powers and then win that way. Against Rogue, you can be a lot more lenient with Hex. You can look to use it on Gadgetzan or deny a lot of value with Tomb Pillager. It's very good against both. Against the Tomb Pillager especially because it denies a coin, which they usually do look to use with the Gadgetzan. So they can turn 6 coin it, use a coin with Gadgetzan and get like a conceal off. So that's usually quite important. Also, be very wary when you play Dr. 4. Rogue's Sap is a very good way to deal with it and mess you up for following turns. And also Harrison Jones does come and play this matchup. With most lists only running 1 Deadly Poison though, it's not too important. It's really like an Azure Drake without spell power and 1 more attack here. So first off, against Shaman, the most important thing is controlling the board. You seize board control and you never give it back, and that's how you win the game. Some keys to this matchup could be hexing big minions like Doctor 4. It's usually your best hex target against Shamans. And then also getting good Lightning Storms off. So if you're behind, you can turn 8 Azure Drake into Lightning Storm, and then hopefully clear the majority of the other Shaman's board. But you're really just looking for a lot of value from that card. Harrison Jones also comes into play here. So again, there are some grinder Shaman lists floating around, and there are also a lot of mid-range Shamans that don't run Doomhammer right now. But Harrison Jones can be pretty good against Shaman if they're the aggro variant. Can usually save you the game and end in a victory if you draw 6 cards from it. Against Zoo, the most important thing is controlling the board, and then maintaining the board after you control it. And while doing that, some key things to keep in mind are that Hex can be used on anything that costs more than 3 mana freely. So Imp Gang Boss, Darkshire Councilman, you don't have a way to deal with it on board, well then go ahead and Hex it. Because not all lists run Sea Giant. If they do, then yeah, Sea Giant is a better target, but it's usually run as a one of right now. So I'd be more lenient with just throwing a Hex away on a 3-drop that you can't deal with on board. Then Lightning Storm is very key in this matchup as well. Really what this card does is let you come back, because you're most likely going to lose board at least once against Zoo. It's really hard, unless you have a really good curve, to maintain board control the entire time. But Lightning Storm kind of gives you a way to get back in the game. Against Warrior, key card is Hex. Very good to use against the Sylvanas that all control Warrior lists will be running. And then against Cthulhu, if you do see that it is Cthulhu Warrior, Hex is very good to defeat like a 16-16 minion. Very, very good against that. Then another very key thing against Warrior matchups is Brawl. So we're very favored against Control Warrior, and it's just because we can keep on filling up the board after they use all their hard removal, and they don't really have a way to deal with it. So you're looking at Beto Brawls against the control lists, and then after Brawls, fill up the board with Think from Below. After the Warrior has used both Brawls, then you drop the Thunderbluff Valiant, and you just keep on hero powering, and then you win the game. Also in this matchup, Harrison against all Warriors, Harrison Jones is very key. Even against just tempo-y lists, removing whatever they get off of Malkrok, it's quite important. Against aggro lists, again, destroying the Arcanite Reaper is very big. And against control lists, clearing Gorehowl or even one charge on a Fiery War Axe is pretty good. Okay, so now we're going to talk about the cards for a little bit, each individual one that is. So we're going to start off with Rockbiter Weapon. It's basically half of a Fiery War Axe is the way that you think about this. And it also has lots of synergy with Alakir. So Rockbiter, Alakir is 18 damage late game. So that's a good 10 mana finisher with this list. Next up is Argent Squire. So this is a strong card that's in the list just to contest other early game decks like Zoo, and again more Shaman Mirrors. So you can Argent Squire then Flame Tongue and trade up into a Tunnel Trog if you're playing against another Shaman. Just a lot of good things that Divine Shield allows you to do. Next is Tunnel Trog. So this is one of the more busted cards on this deck. Snowballs really, really hard, really, really fast. With cards like Totem Golem or Feral Spirit, the follow-up turns into a mini Undertaker, I guess. It's very strong though, and I would not recommend running any Shaman deck without it right now that's based on Overload. Other than Grinder. I mean, Grinder's fine without Tunnel Trog, but any sort of a mid-rangey or aggro Shaman deck without Tunnel Trog. Flame Tongue Totem is very good in a board control deck. It allows you to just trade all of your 0-2 totems, make them 2-2s, and then trade into your opponent's bigger minions, and just control the board further, and just sack your small creeps into their bigger ones. Next is Totem Golem, so, 2 mana, 3-4, what more do you want? You coin this out on turn 1, you're in a very, very good spot. Most classes can't deal with it. Think like Priest, Shadow, or Pain is probably the best way that a class could deal with this card. It's very good against Warriors though, as going into turn 2, their War Axe doesn't deal with it. They need War Axe and then a turn 3 Ravaging Ghoul, or War Axe plus Blood to Ichor. And next is Feral Spirit. So this is a strong card, lots of synergy with Tunnel Trog. It makes it a 3-3, so it's pretty good. And then, 3 mana for theoretically 4-6 worth of stats is pretty good. The Overload does kind of suck though, but if you play it on turn 3, then turn 4 you can Hero Power released. And if you coin it out on 2, then you have 1 mana to deal with, so you can like Rockbiter or something. So it's not terrible, the Overload, but you just have to play around it the whole game. Hex is a very, very good card in this deck. It's just one of the best hard removal cards in the entire game. Sylvanas is annoying you, well, I mean, just Hex it. It's pretty easy, right? Then next is Lightning Storm. This is just a good way to get back on board. It's almost useless against decks like Control Warrior, but I mean, If you're against like a Cthulhu list, you can spell Power Totem and then double Lightning Storm, deal with Twin Emperor Veclors at least. Against aggro decks, it really does shine though. Then Manatide Totem. So this is in the deck as a one of. It's actually really good. I'm very happy with this card. If it sticks for like 3 or 4 turns, you usually just win the game. And then even just playing this card on turn 3 if you have nothing else to do in cycling is usually quite good. It's something that your opponent has to use resources to remove instantly, or else you'll just snowball the card advantage to a victory. Tuskar Totemic, I actually favor this as a 3-drop over Feral Spirit. It's so good just for that 3 out of 7 chance of getting one of the insane totems, being Flame Tongue, Manatide, and Totem Golem. And 3 out of 7 actually happens much more often than you think. So I would definitely say that this card is very good in this list. And I'm happy to play it on 3 because you're not overloaded, and then you can follow up into the next card in the deck, Dr. 4. I'm not going to try to pronounce his name, just know it as Dr. 4, the 4 mana 7/7. You guys have all seen the memes. This card is actually busted if it doesn't get removed right away. However, opponents usually think ahead and play around this card especially. You're probably going to see an execute from a warrior, like Ravaging Ghoul execute on their turn 4 to deal with it. Warriors will often keep executes in their starting hand just to deal with this, and other classes will use their hard removal as well. So like a mage will Fireball Ping it, for example, or just, Frostball to deal with it the turn after. But yeah, most people do play around this card quite heavily, but when they don't have the answer, it's very strong. Next is Azure Drake. Again, I'm just a huge fan of this card. So like in the Chinese Temple Mage guide, I'm just a huge fan of Azure Drake. It's really great. 5 mana 4/4 with spell power, draw a card. I probably played this card on turn 8, hoping for a Lightning Storm like 5 times, and got the Lightning Storm. It's very good for a full board clear. Definitely happy with this card, and glad that it's ran as a 2-of here. Next up is our buddy Harrison Jones. He's going to take you to a museum. I think this card is very good in the current meta. For periods of time, it can be underwhelming if you're playing against a lot of druids or classes that just don't have good weapons like rogue. It's even good against rogue, sorry about that. It's good. 5 mana, draw 1 or 2 cards is fine with a 5/4 body. But if you're queuing into a lot of druids, priests, I mean, Harrison Jones isn't that great, and you can tech him out for a second Thunder Bluff then. But in general, right now, I think the card's good enough with warriors and shamans being tier 1. It's definitely something to consider running. Next is Thunder Bluff. This is, a very good win condition against control decks. A very good one against control decks. You play against warrior decks, you wait for both their brawls, and then you just throw down Thunder Bluff Valiant and start hero powering with your totems. And then you just win the game. And I think that's why this list is so favored against control warrior. Also because of cards like Brawl. Think from Below, and then that coming out after Brawl is very good for 0 mana, or close to 0. And next up is Fire Alley. So this is a card a lot of people weren't running for a long time, but in this more control-y mid-range list, we can fit the Fire Alley in. I'm very happy about it. It tends to be quite a good card. Sometimes we put in awkward scenarios where it doesn't trade into like a 4 health minion or something like that very well, so you do have to use this hero, its Battle Cry, going face. Even then, I think this card's so good. It's very versatile. Even later on in the game, if your Manatide's stuck for too long, for example, turn 6 you can use your Fire Alley, clear the Manatide so you don't overdraw. It's great. I like the card a lot. So the last 2 cards. So first off, we have Thing from Below. This card is way more busted than Dr. 4 in my opinion. Later on, it's usually a 0 mana 5/5. Huge tempo swing. You're playing against any sort of a control list that has the board clears that they want. They're going to use the board clears and then hope to be able to stabilize after that. And then you just go ahead and throw down double Thing from Below. And, it's a 0 mana 10/10 if you have 2 of them. That's insane. So you just do that and then you usually win again. And it's one of the reasons why we have board control and can hold it so well with this list. And then lastly, our big late game finisher, Alakir the Windlord. So this has replaced the Doomhammer just because Harrison Jones is everywhere. And I don't want my opponents to win off of that. But again, I like that Vlps decided to include Alakir rather than Doomhammer in this deck. And the Alakir is almost the reason why I chose to play this one in the first place. I open him and I've never used him. So this deck I get to. And it feels satisfying dealing 18 damage for 10 mana with this card and double Rockbiter. Okay, here are my win rates from rank 3 to legend and climbing in legend. So this is all over about 150 games from rank 3 to peaking around top 100 legend. So to start off, Druid, we have 43.5% win rate. Again, this is only over 23 games, so the win rate is probably closer to 50 in my opinion. But we got dumpstered by Deathwing about 4 games in a row. Not in a row, but 4 games total. The next is Hunter, so just a little bit over 50. It's close to a 50-50 in my opinion. But yeah, again, we don't have enough games to show that. Like everything else, really, we don't have enough games to show like a very conclusive win rate. I think the matchup's fine though. Just usually whoever curves out well, or if you have like the Hex to deal with their high mains or not, or the Storm to deal with their Call of the Wild. Then next is Mage. So Freeze Mage, we really don't want to queue into the list. It's just super heavy counters us any board control deck really. So that's unfavorable. Then Tempo Mage, you know, we can lose if we get Spell Power into Arcane Blast on our Totem Golem, or if they shut us down early and we can't get back in the game with the Lightning Storm. Then yeah, we do lose to Tempo Mage in that case. And then next is Paladin. So we've only played 5 games, 4 wins, 1 loss. So nothing really to say there. Just play fast against the Zoth Paladin, refill the board. After they've used it, clears, and that's about it. Then Priest is basically the same thing. Just 4 wins, 0 losses. Just play around the board clears, and when they use them all, then just go hard. Then Rogue. So we're 7-2 against Rogue, so just under 80% win rate. So Rogue, again, you just curve out well, then you beat Rogue, in my opinion. They don't have too much to do. Maybe they sap a Doctor 4, then you know you don't have much to do on turn 5. But if you play around that, then what can they really do? You curve out well, you're happy, free win. Most of the time. The next is Shaman. So we played quite a few Shamans. So far we're 13-7 against them. So I'd say we shut down the aggro list pretty hard with cards like Lightning Storm. And Harrison as well. Harrison's won me a number of games against aggro Shamans. Just drawing me 6 cards and then giving me things from below for 0 mana to really come back in the game against them. And then next is Warlocks. So we're 9-6 against Zoo. Maybe a few Reno games I don't quite remember. But a 60% win rate against Warlock I'm happy with. And maybe that's just getting lucky. I'm pretty sure it's closer to 50, maybe even a little bit below. But again, just time will tell, playing more games. With this many games, it's kind of hard to say anything about the win rates. But this is just a general idea, I guess. Then next is Warrior. So 61% win rate is pretty bad against Warrior. But again, there's a lot of tempo thrown in here. And if they have the War Axe early, we can't really do too much. Which has happened a lot. But overall, we're 22 wins to 14 losses. Most of our wins have come from beating Control Warriors and Cthulhu Warriors, just because we're so favored against them later on. I believe Vlps said something, we have like, he has like an 80 to 90% win rate against them. But that's probably just him playing the Warrior matchup a lot better than I have. So yeah, shout out to him again. And I'm just trying to learn this deck too. I mean, every time I play, I do learn more. So I'm not a master like he is. If you guys do want to see like the highest tier playing with this, check out his stream for sure. And again, these are just the matchups and the overall win rates in numbers rather than percentage. So I believe I talked about most of that, but overall so far we're 90 wins and 64 losses. Okay, as far as gameplay goes, I'm not actually going to include any in this video just to make it a little bit shorter for you guys and just get the content down, you know, very quickly. So I'll have a link to my Road to Legend series, which is just gameplay with this deck. This exact deck and me climbing to Legend myself with it. And then I have a game in Legend against Strifecrow. I'll also link that. Maybe some of you guys have seen that. But yeah, I played against Strifecrow, while he was playing Tempo Mage and we were playing VLPS's Midrange Shaman. So just in conclusion, we talked about why play Midrange Shaman. We talked about some general advice of the deck. We talked about the deck list. We talked about mulligans for every class, matchups for every class, you know, specific things that are important in those matchups, and important cards in the mulligan. Talked about our overall win rate so far with the deck, and I talked about gameplay a little bit, and again linked you guys to some videos that I played. And then if you like the video, feel free to like, comment, and subscribe. Let me know what you liked about the video, what you didn't like about the video. Feel free to check out my Twitch and Twitter. Twitch so you know when I'm live streaming. Twitter, I tweet out before I live stream, whenever I start live streaming, and all the YouTube videos that I post. And if you like the deck, please check out Vlps. This guy's a great streamer. I really like watching him myself, and it's how I figured out about the deck. So yeah, I asked him, and he was nice enough to let me make this guide. So big shout out to him. And at the end here, just a little bit about me. So if you guys have seen the Chinese Temple Mage guide, then it's the exact same thing, really. So I'm just a guy who's gotten Legend a bunch of times. So I figured I'd start streaming. I've been doing it for about a month now, enjoying it a lot, and then making YouTube videos as well, such as this one. And I'm still learning this deck, so I'm not a master at it. And again, VLPS is the one who created this deck, and probably knows a lot more about it than me, and there's probably some tips and tricks that I'm missing still. But again, like anyone else playing Hearthstone, I'm just trying to continuously learn and get better. So I will hopefully improve with this deck the more that I play it. And again, there's my link to Twitch. It'll be in the description of this video as well as VLPS's again. And I do upload daily YouTube videos, so just gameplay clips from my stream. And then I do weekly PowerPoint videos like this one. There's going to be a little bit of a hiatus though because I'm going to Europe from July 1st to July 17th. I will be posting pictures of that on my Twitter as well. But yeah, the PowerPoint videos will return as soon as I get back. And thank you guys a ton for watching this video. And again, feel free to check me out, check out VLPS. Links to everything I talked about will be in the description. Peace out.